The Befaco Rampage is an amazing module for all sorts of patching techniques, but especially for generative patching, thanks to its many CV ins and outs. So we will build today a generative patch from scratch, concentrating on Rampage. Of course, many of the things we will look at today will also work in hardware with the hardware Rampage, and probably some things will also work with the make noise maths. So, here I already have a mixer, the mind meld mixer. I have a send reverb set. I have also the MB module from Störmelder, so I can have an enhanced browser. I can change the preview size and also have my most used modules. And we will also use color coding. So just so maybe it's easier to follow. So audio will be red, clocks, triggers, and gates will be blue. Pitch information will be yellow and modulation will be green. Now the foundation for this patch will be a variation of the Krell technique. So let's set one function of Rampage. Rampage has two function generators. Let's set one of them to cycle and trigger it once so it will start looping. Maybe make this a bit slower so you can see here that it's looping. And by the way, if you download and open this patch, you will have to manually trigger Rampage. It's not saved with the patch. So if we look at this on the scope, right, I will send this envelope to the scope. We can see that basically we have a looping envelope similar to an LFO, but the nice thing about Rampage is that it has an end of cycle output that will output a trigger whenever the function, the envelope, finishes its cycle, and we can use this for all sorts of things, like for example, sample and hold. So I will use the one from Bog Audio in this case. We will trigger the upper section with the end of cycle output. This is, by the way, normal to the lower section, so there is no need to trigger both of them. And now we can use this sample and hold to change the length of the envelope, so each cycle will be different, but I will want to control the depth of modulation. So let's use the dual VCA from VCV, which will look like this. I will send the sample and hold to the VCA, again, both sections. Let's lower the levels a bit. This is basically the modulation amount. And now I will send this to the rise CV input. So basically how long it will take the envelope or the function to rise, and the fall, so how long it will take the function to decay or to fall. So now if we look on the scope, you can see this quite clearly. Since we're using the end of cycle output to trigger the sample and hold, each cycle will be different and we get a sort of a generative clock source that we can use. So let's get rid of the scope for now and let's start adding some voices. Let's put this here. We will start with something simple. So we will start with Basal from Volt and the VCA. I will send Basal to the VCA, again red is audio, and to the mixer, so we get this voice. And now we can use the same envelope, the same function, output A, to open this VCA. Right, maybe make this a bit slower. And now we can add also pitch variation to this, and we will use this sample and hold. But again, we need to attenuate it a bit, just so the pitch is not going too up or to higher octaves. So let's use one sample and hold. Pitch information is yellow. One sample and hold, send it to the VCA and open the VCA just a bit. And I will want to quantize this. Of course, you can also keep it unquantized if you wish, but I will use Quantum from ML, and let's go with D, E flat, G, A, and B flat. I use this scale quite a lot recently. Send the pitch information to the quantizer and from there to Basal. Maybe open the VCA a bit more. So now with each cycle, we get a different envelope and also a different pitch. Let's add some movement with oct from Instruo, basically 8 unsynced LFOs. So let's make this a bit slower and use 2 slow LFOs to modulate the voice a bit through the modulation inputs. A bit here and quite a bit there. I will add also some delay with a delay from VCV. So I will send the voice first to the delay, change the delay time, add more feedback a bit. Right. And let's add lots of reverb. And maybe also I will use another output of oct to modulate the panning of this voice in the mixer here. So already we have one generative voice. Very nice. Okay, let's do the same with the second envelope, with the second function of Rampage. Again, I will set it to cycle, trigger it once so it will start looping, maybe change the envelope here a bit more, maybe make it a bit slower. And again, we will need another sample and hold. I'm just duplicating the modules I have with Control D. End of cycle, we'll go and trigger the sample and hold. Again, this it says gate input, in this case it's a trigger, is normal to the lower section, so no need to trigger both of them. This will go to the VCA, let's change the VCA a bit, and to the rise and fall CV inputs of the second function. Now this we will use to control or to bring in a bass voice, so let's use Saich, also from Instruo. Let's put it here. And also a filter, I will use tangents, a low pass filter, so Saich. Saich is basically a super saw, sort of a super saw oscillator, so it's 4 saw oscillators in one. This will go to the mixer. Maybe take the levels a bit down in the mixer, I can change the gain. Something like this. Okay, now let's turn on its sub-oscillator by pressing this button here. If I press it another time, the sub-oscillator will also have pulse width modulation, built-in pulse width modulation. Now, I wanted to play a low G note, so the easiest thing in VCV will be to use ref tone. If you are in hardware, you will have to tune it by yourselves, but in VCV it's quite easy. I will just use ref tone from Borg Audio. This sends constant pitch. Send this to the volt per octave input, and let's take it. Oh yes, 2 octaves down. Change the filter a bit. Very nice. Okay, let's add some movement to its built-in VCA. Saich has a built-in VCA. But I will want the root note, the sub-oscillator, to be always on. So in the right-click menu, we can choose constant root. And now have a look here on the lights. You can see that the oscillator number 1 is always on, but the other ones are fading in and out. So what we will do, we will use oct to add movement to it, maybe with a slower LFO. So now again, only oscillators 2, 3 and 4 will have movement in them, and the sub-oscillator will always be on. And now we can use the second envelope, the second function that we have here, again as sort of a generative function. We can use it to bring in the filter or to open the filter a bit. And let's actually do something like this. To add even more variation, let's mix this function with another LFO from oct. So I will use umix from Borg Audio. This is basically It will mix both signals at unity gain, so without any attenuation. If you do this in hardware, make sure to use a DC coupled mixer, so it will work also with slow moving modulation signals. So again, I will use the envelope and also another, let's use this one, another LFO from Oct. So we have a bit more movement and variation. Okay, and now let's do this, something I do all the time because I really like it. And that's sending the signal after the low pass filter to a high pass filter, and from there to a delay with lots of reverb. So only the high frequencies will go to the delay and reverb. So I will use another tangents. I will just initialize it. And now from the filter, from the low pass filter, this will go to a high pass filter. So according to the cutoff of the low pass, only the higher frequencies go past the high pass filter. Let's change this a bit and add a delay. I will use chronoblob in this case. It will not be the last one we will use today. So this will go to chronoblob. I will change the delay time a bit from the left and right, maybe a ping pong delay. And now we already have here the dry signal, so there is no need for the dry signal again. The wet will go all the way up, maybe a bit more feedback. This will go to the mixer. Maybe take the levels a bit down and add lots and lots and lots. Maybe take also the lows. There is a high pass filter here on this mixer. Lots and lots and lots of reverb. Yes, let's also change the names here of the mixer. This will be Basal, this will be bass, and this will be bass delay. Right, so again, according to the low pass filter, how many high frequencies are going through the high pass filter, this will go to the delay and reverb. Very cool. Okay, let's add another voice. This one will be an FM operator. Let's activate, if I zoom in a bit, we can activate its level envelope, which means that the envelope, the ADSR envelope, the built-in envelope will be routed to the level. So just by clicking this button here. Let's use again a long delay. So I will use another chronoblob. This will go to chronoblob. In this case, I will change also the delay, the time modulation mode from tape to not tape, so it will not glitch when I move the delay time. You will see in a second also why I'm doing this. Lots of feedback, different delay times for left and right. Maybe again a ping pong delay. And this will go again to the mixer. This already FMOP. I think the bass is a bit too high. Just a bit. Something like this. Okay, so we have this going to the mixer. Very nice. And now for pitch information, let's sample the max output, the maximum output, this output here of Rampage. So again, if we look on the scope, this output basically will output the maximum voltage of both functions. So we can use this for all sorts of things, but also we can use this for pitch. So I will just take the scope away, and now we will add another sample and hold. I will use this sample and hold to sample this envelope. I'm using now the sample and hold from Count Modular. And again, the signal we will use will come from the maximum output. I'm using a yellow cable because this is for pitch information. I will use another quantizer. I'm just duplicating what I have here. Now before the signal goes to the quantizer, let's attenuate it a bit. Again, I don't want to have too high octaves, too many high notes, or notes that are going too high. So I will just close it and add something like this, maybe around 10%, let's say. This will go to the quantizer and to the oscillator. And now to trigger the sample and hold, let's use the rising output of the first function, like this output here. So as long as the function, again I can show you this on the scope, as long as the function is rising, this output will output a gate, and you can see this here. It's falling, it's rising, there is a gate open, it's falling, the gate is closed, it's rising again, the gate is open, and so on. So we will use this rising output to trigger the sample and hold. And again, all of this is more or less generative because this envelope is always changing. So also the rising gate output will also change, its timing will also change. So this will trigger the sample and hold. And we will use this gate to gate also the FM operator. So sometimes the voice will have more sustain and sometimes less. Right, I can change the timbre here with the feedback. Maybe just a bit lower. And let's add lots and lots, not lots and lots, but some reverb. And I will use another envelope, maybe a quicker envelope, not envelope, LFO from Oct to modulate the feedback. Again, the feedback is just a timbre control. If you are doing this in hardware, any oscillator with timbre control will work. And now I will use the sample and hold we already have here. And here I will use them to modulate the delay times of this chronoblob. This is why I changed also the, how is it called again? The time modulation mode, so it will not glitch. And again, all of this, the base of all of this is coming from Rampage, which with its looping functions and CV inputs and outputs. Okay, let's add another voice. I will use Plaits. We will add chords, sort of chords, or not sort of chords, but chords. I will set it to chords mode. Again, I want to tune it to G, so I will duplicate the ref tone we already have. I will just take the octaves up. I don't want it to be too low. And this will go to the volt per octave. And we will use its level input with an envelope. So I will use the AD. Attack decay envelope from Nischi. Let's send this to the level input. And we will use in this case the falling output of the first function. So again, just like the rising output, this output will output a gate whenever this function is going down, falling whenever it decays. Let's set a nice long attack on this attack decay envelope so it will fade in. And now let's send this to the mixer just to see how it sounds like. You can already call this chords. Right, we can change the chord. And we can change the inversion with the timbre, so the chord with the harmonics, and the inversion with the timbre control. So let's modulate the chord type, but it has no dedicated attenuation, so I will use another VCA. Let's close it all the way for now. And I will use another LFO from Oct. Oct is really an amazing module. Right, so this will modulate the chord type, and also let's modulate the inversion. In this case we have a built-in attenuverter, so no need for the VCA, just a bit. Okay, now I will want to control the brightness of the sound of this voice, and we will do something like this. We will add another chronoblob told you we will use quite a few chronoblobs in this patch. Now I will set it to let's take this out for a second. I will set it to a mono delay, one of the blue modes, and I set it to mono because when it's in mono mode we have a feedback loop that we can use. So I will use a filter, a low pass filter in the feedback loop with tangents. So the send will go to the low pass filter, and from the low pass filter it will go back to the return. Again, this is the send and this is the return. Very cool. Okay, so now we can use Plaits. I will use the delay 100% wet because I want only the signal that's going through the filter in this case. And now let's send this to the mixer. Start adding some movement, maybe more feedback, change again the delay time, here like this. Right, now we can modulate the filter a bit again with oct, very slowly maybe, something like this. Reverb, send reverb. Take it a bit down. Right? So it will fade in and out according to the filter. Also here we can modulate the panning, maybe with the quicker LFO. Very nice. Okay, let's add another voice. This one will be with Simpliciter from Nischi, the sampler. In hardware you can use something like Morphogene or the Instruo Looper, for example. And what we will sample will be the FM operator after the delay, just like this. And I don't want to hear the dry signal, so the original sound. I just want to hear the recorded material, so I will turn off the sound on sound. And now to trigger and stop the recording, we can use again one of the rising outputs, and I will use the rising output of the second function in this case. Let's send this to the mixer. It's already recording and playing back, as you can see. Let's call this sample, take this down quite a bit. Right, so again we will randomly or generatively, better said, record this signal and play it back. I will also use the expander of Simpliciter, which is coming from the right of the module. And now what we will do, we will add some movement. With the expander we can change the playing speed and the direction. So what we'll do, we'll use branches from mutable instruments. It's called the Bernoulli gate in VCV. And we will add some probability to this change. So I will use the falling output of the second function. And again, branches will add probability to this output. So one output will go to the backwards double time, one output to the backwards half time. Sometimes they will work together, sometimes not. We can also add movement with the expander. We can add wow, just like on a tape machine. And now let's add lots of reverb and take this even down, even more down. Right. Just take some of the lower frequencies out. Right, so this is another voice, another texture, another layer. And to add even more texture, let's add noise. I will use the noise from VCV Rack, send it again through a low pass filter. Of course, you can experiment with other filters and other oscillators and so on. So I will use white noise. This will go to the low pass filter and to the mixer. Let's call this noise. And on this mixer, as I showed you before, we have a high pass filter. I'm going to take this all the way up. You can use another filter for this if you're doing this in hardware, for example. I just don't need low frequencies in this case. Right, and again, let's use Oct to add movement to this. But you know what we will do? We will actually mix, again with U-Mix, we will mix a few LFOs from Oct just to have a different wave shape, something a bit more with variation. Add lots and lots of reverb. Maybe take this down a bit. Right, just to add a bit more texture to everything. Let's again pan this voice with Oct. Is it this one? No, it's this one. Very nice. Let's add one last voice, a sort of a burst of notes. So we will use a burst generator. There are a few available also in hardware. We will use a burst generator. The voice itself, the sound will come from the TSL, from Instruo. And I will want to morph between the waveforms. So let's use the vector mixer from Nischi. In hardware, you can use something like Planar 2 from IntelliGel. I will use 4 waves. So let's use the sub oscillator and take it 1 octave down. The pulse wave, the triangle and the sine. And now we can record movement. If I activate auto record and I just start moving, I hold this red dot and I just move it around, and you can see that it's recording. And then I stop and I hit loop and run, so it will just continue looping. Let's send this to a VCA. I will use the stereo VCA from Volt. It's called Punch. So we have a stereo signal. And I will use an attack decay, again an attack decay envelope to control or to open this VCA. Maybe take the decay a bit up for now. And the burst generator will trigger this envelope. Let's set the repeats to maximum and the time to maximum, so we have more repeats and it will take longer for them to end, and the jitter also all the way up, so we have something nice and wonky. If we listen to this, let's see, again the stereo signal, trigger the burst generator. Something like this. Now this burst generator is also a CV output that we can use. In this case I will use it for pitch information. But first of all, we will set it to random. You can see this CV output is connected to this knob. If I set it to random, it will output random values with each burst, which is quite good for generative patches. And I will also attenuate it a bit. Again, I don't want the full range. Yellow cables or pitch, maybe something like this. And I will use another quantizer. I'm just duplicating the one I have here. So this will go to the quantizer and to our voice. Very nice. So now if we trigger it, we should get different notes. I will use the same pitch information to modulate the decay time also. Maybe, yeah, this is okay from the VCA. And let's set up another chronoblob. I promised you there will be more chronoblobs here. Again, I will set the time modulation mode because we will modulate the delay times later. Ping pong delay, lots of feedback. And let's use really the sample and hold to modulate the... let's use this one here and this one here, the delay times, and open the attenuators a bit. Let's do something like this maybe. Very nice. So now to trigger the burst generator, let's use the comparator output from Rampage. This one here. This will output a gate whenever the B envelope is greater than the A envelope. So again, we get a sort of a generative gate because the envelopes are always changing. But I want this to happen less often so that the burst generator will not be triggered all the time. So what we can do is we can divide this with a clock divider. I will use a clock divider. This one is from Count Modular. I will use the comparator output, this gate output, and maybe I divide it by 16 to trigger the burst generator. Let's add also some, let's call this burst. Maybe take this down a bit and add lots and lots of reverb. Maybe not so much. Right? Let's have a listen to this a bit. Okay, of course there is a lot still to fine-tune here, but this patch can play in the background for a bit, and all thanks to Rampage. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Cheers!